meeting. If for the ANC to support the set down. So I don't, Michael, would you like to begin a little lead in?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So let me just add a little clarity.
Yep.
I think we may have gotten a little ahead of the process with talking about supporting the set down tonight because the actual application hasn't been filed yet. I believe the notice to file has been submitted, but the actual application hasn't. So generally the process is that the application is filed, Office of Planning provides a report. That report then we can act on and look at when we decide to set it down for public hearing. So we Rochelle, I gave you the wrong information about the possibility of setting it down tonight.
Well, that's okay.
I think we'll go ahead and have a presentation from the project owner, and then we can do the set down once we get the information. We'll decide to or not support the set down once we get the information from OP on the analysis of the project.
All right, Jamie has something to say. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I actually am trying to get the VPN. My VPN isn't working, so I'm going to have my colleague email it to me. Can you hang on 1 second?
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Hey.
So Deborah, Jamie is with 1200 Fifth Street, so we can inquire about that at the end.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, guys. My colleague Stephanie actually is emailing it to me and putting it in our chat because I would have to restart my computer to get my VPN to reset. Sorry. The fun part of working from home. So give me 1 second. So
Can I do something to help or?
No. I think as soon as I get the email, here it is. I just want to make sure the PDF is here and it is, and as soon as it loads, then I think I should be good. Just give me 1 second.
All right.
Sorry about that, guys. Just want to make sure I have all my materials here. Sorry. Now it's saying I'm responding. There we go. Got it. Thank you so much for having me. I will share my screen in a second, but I wanted to just maybe take a second to introduce myself and I'm just thanking my colleagues. Sorry. My name is Jamie Weinbaum, and I am an executive vice president at Mid-City Financial Corporation. Sorry, I'm trying to find my Zoom. Okay. At Mid-City Financial Corporation, and we're a 55-year-old company. We own and asset manage a number of different apartment communities, primarily affordable housing and mixed income housing developments. We've owned the apartment project called Heritage at Shaw Station for many years. I think we built it in the late 1960s. We also built Washington Apartments, which is in Shaw, in Commissioner Niagara's single member district. And we've also owned that for many years. This is a site that we are proposing a PUD for to go to the zoning commission and rezone this site and add additional market rate and affordable housing to what is there today. So I'm going to share my screen now and tell me if you can see that. Yes.
There we go. We're good. Thank you.
Perfect. So this is the site that we're here to talk about tonight. It's bounded by S Street, 8th Street, and the southern entrance to the Shaw Howard Metro Station. And there's a public alley behind the site. Heritage at Shaw Station is an apartment community that was initially this side of the street, as well as the garden style buildings to the west of 8th Street, between 8th and 9th, just south of New Bethel. And what we did is several years ago, we stopped leasing on this side of the property. And over a couple of year period, through natural attrition, through COVID, unfortunately, as well as the opportunity that some folks took to move into some renovated units on this side. We completely vacated this side of the property. There are 4 garden style buildings with 50 units. All 50 are vacant now. And so it makes sense to look at beautifying the area and adding new housing. So I'm going to tell you some of the basics about the project on this next slide. What we're proposing is an expertly crafted 9-story apartment building designed by Eric Colbert, who's worked in Shaw and in U Street and down by Union Market and a lot of different neighborhoods. He's a well-respected local architect. And this will be a rental apartment building. I'm going to get into some of the aspects of the design in a moment, but it'll be a concrete building with largely brick facade and large windows and really large balconies, which I'm going to show you as well. We'll have approximately 316 apartments here. 15% of those units will be affordable, and they'll be for folks making up to 60% of the median income. This is our primary proffer when you propose a PUD to the Zoning Commission in exchange for the additional extra density. The Zoning Commission is looking for benefits that will benefit the direct neighborhood as well as the district writ large. And so affordable housing, as I'm sure you all know, is really at a premium today. And so the idea of providing almost double the amount of affordable housing that would be required by right, which would be 8% by right, and we're proposing to go to 15%. It's worth noting that today, those 50 units, all 50 of those before they were vacant were market rate units. So this was a site that didn't have any affordable housing. And now, if you do the math, 15% of those 316 or so units is almost 50 units in and of itself. So basically, you're getting almost 50 units of affordable housing when there were none there of the total units. Another one of our proffers is having some larger units. We've heard from members of the community that, we've had a lot of studios and 1-bedrooms here. Are we going to have some 2s and 3s? So 20% of the units will either be 2 or 3-bedroom apartments. We'll have 1 level of parking underneath the site below grade. It'll be 93 spaces. Access to that parking, as well as all loading and trash, are going to happen through the public alley. So there's not going to be any curb cuts associated with the site whatsoever. All that will happen off the alley. And some of the amenities will include a fitness center and a club room and a pool with southern exposure on the roof. And I'll show you a few of those images as we go on. Here are a few design precedents that we looked at. Again, concrete buildings, large windows, brick, really beautiful design. We love the Thompson Hotel, which is in the Navy Yard area. We love this design. And we love this image because it shows some really large balconies, which we're planning to have in our project as well. So these are some of the precedents that spoke to us. And so here's the first view of the proposed project. This is looking from S Street in the foreground down 8th Street, looking south. So this is the corner of 8th and S. And a few things I'll point out is that we have a setback here above the 6th floor before the building continues up. And this is to be responsive to the fact that there are row homes across the street. We wanted to make sure we had something that was designed with that in mind. You can also see the very large balconies in these tiers here, as well as here and here and here and here. And these are balconies that come out about 4 feet, but they actually also sit back an additional 5 feet. So they're actually 9 feet deep by 11 feet wide. So it's really almost like an outdoor living room. So they're going to be a fantastic amenity for those units to have a balcony of that size. Really unique as well. On S Street, as well as coming down 8th till maybe about halfway down, we'll have cellar level units. Those are units almost like English basement apartments, and they'll have areaways with a little bit of extra private outdoor space. They won't have stairs to walk down or up to units. So we'll still have controlled access through the main residential entrance, which is kind of mid-block on 8th, but they will provide extra outdoor space for residents, which we know is such a premium, especially with COVID and all that. We think people are really going to respond to having those opportunities. As I move down to the next image, this just comes around onto S Street, and this shows you again those balconies, the setback, as well as the alley entrance. And right here, you can see where the parking entrance is going to be. So cars will come in and park down underground by entering over here closer to S Street. And then flipping around, here's the view from the southern portion of the building. This is from the corner of near R Street looking up 8th. And you can obviously see the Metro canopy here. And what this shows you is we tried to give this southern corner of the building its own personality. We wanted something that was really designed forward and sophisticated. And so we've used a different brick color, and we have these really beautiful kind of angled windows. We call them like a sawtooth window. And so you can see that the direction for the top 2 levels goes one way, and then the next 2 levels the other. And it creates just a bit of a rhythm, and it's a detail that people may not catch upon first glance, but adds, again, some more character to the building. So we're excited about that. You'll notice that we have a storefront at the ground floor, but we do not anticipate having any retail in the building. We did talk to a number of different retail consultants and brokers. And while in theory, the idea of being right by Metro, that retail could work, we've seen a lot of retail, frankly, in better locations that just hasn't worked. And this is a little bit of what I call a tweener in terms of location. It's, not quite co-located with any other retail. It would really be standalone. And what we didn't want was to build retail and then have it sit vacant. We know that that exists in other places, and we were really trying to avoid that. So instead, we plan to activate the ground floor with amenity space for the building, as well as planning to put our internal bike room here in high visibility location, and really celebrate and encourage people to use bicycles and make it easy for them to get their bicycles out of this room and to get downtown or wherever it is that they want to go. So we think that'll be very unique. As we come around to the alley side, you can obviously see the canopy again, and you can see more of this detail of this southern corner building. And what you can see is that we've pulled the building back from the alley side. So we have strong prominence along 8th Street, but by pulling the building back, we've widened the light well that gets into that alley. And we really want to celebrate the alley side as well. We don't want to treat this as the back of the building or the side that has inferior materials in any way. It also has that same brick and the same kind of treatment and balconies here. So we want to create that opportunity. And I think if you are on Rhode Island Avenue, you're near the library and you look over, you'll realize that this is a very high visibility side. And just because it's an alley, you can really see straight down there and in between this future building as well as the buildings on the other side. So we wanted to make sure we gave this a lot of attention, and we think there's ample opportunity to landscape up on this courtyard as well here, the second floor. And then you can see, the trucks, because loading will happen back here. And then finally, or not finally, but next, are a few different images along 8th Street to show you some of the views. So you can see the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 correspond to these labeled images. And they just show you, again, deep balconies, the main residential entrance, number 2, and some of the feel along 8th Street itself. And then if you pull all the way back, for folks who are interested in seeing, what does the entirety of 8th Street look like? You don't sometimes see this in a rendering. I wanted to make sure you understood, sort of from the setback on the north side near S, all the way through to those deeper balconies we were talking about, the main residential entrance over here, this sort of southern building we talked about with the sophisticated palette. Here's your rooftop where your pool will be, and then the canopy where the Metro is. This gives you a whole view of 8th Street. And then coming around, this gives you a whole view of S Street. So you can see that again. And then coming around, this gives you a whole view of R Street elevation with the Metro in the foreground. And this shows you that how we pull the building back on the alley side. And then the last side would be the alley elevation. And you can see here, as I mentioned, the entrance to the parking closer to S Street. And then about mid-block, or mid-alley, I should say, is where you'd enter for loading and trash and whatnot. And so it gives you kind of a feel for that. And then I'll also show you what we anticipate to be really great care to the street trees that exist, and to even supplementing those trees along 8th Street, as well as using the opportunity, because there's pretty deep, pretty wide area before the property line, to have great ground cover and landscaping and additional trees in this buffer zone. So we're really looking at how we can really add to the tree canopy with this component. And then we're also looking to maintain 8-foot wide sidewalks here, which we think will be great, and that'll enhance the width from what it is today. I know I didn't get to look in the chat. I see that there is a question there, but I'll just wrap by also showing you some next steps for folks who are curious. So we already have met with a number of different stakeholders. Thanks to the help of Commissioner Eichler, we hosted a virtual open house on January the 6th, and we had folks who popped into that to ask questions. And we mailed a notice of intent to file the PUD to individuals living within 200 feet of the site. And we anticipate filing our application in the last week of February. Of course, after this meeting next Tuesday, we'll go to ANC 6E and give the same presentation. Hopefully won't bore you again, apologies in advance, next Tuesday night on Zoom so that everyone is aware of it. After that, we'll go to the Zoning Commission, where at a regular meeting, they'll take up this matter and decide whether they want to set down the project, which basically means give it a hearing. And so at that point, they'll hear from the Office of Planning, who will file a report providing their feedback of the project. We've already met with them and we've gotten overwhelmingly positive feedback thus far from OP, which is great. We've also met with DDOT and had really positive feedback from DDOT, but they'll, I believe, file a report then. And then we would ask ANC 6E to commit to complete a form, which is a set down form, which basically says, yes, this warrants a hearing, and we hope it does. And then at that point, we'll keep meeting with ANC and other community stakeholders and talk more about community benefits and proffers and any other questions about the project. We'll go to ANC 6E again before the hearing and ask for a formal letter of support, and the commissioners will vote on the project. And then that all happens before the hearing, and the hearing will likely be this summer, I think in June or July. And then there'll be an opportunity for members of the public and of course the ANC to testify in support or in opposition of the project, to submit letters in support or in opposition, and basically to be heard. And then the Zoning Commission will weigh in, of course, as well, hopefully approve the project. If that all goes forward, then we'll get busy designing in more detail. And then our hope would be that we'd be able to break ground on the project in the spring of 2024. So let's say a little more than 2 years from now, that's our hope. And then we're likely a little over 2 years for construction. So I could see if we're able to start in the spring of 24, completing in the summer of 26. That's our rough timeline now. Of course, best laid plans, but that's what we're thinking today. So I'm happy to answer questions. If you like, I can click on the chat and see what we got cooking here.
I have a question.
Please, sure.
So I am enamored with the big balconies because I don't get these. I have a small balcony. It's an understatement. So I don't get these really small buildings. So I applaud you for your big balconies. Is that a new trend, or is that just your guys' idea?
You know, it's interesting. I've heard of one or two projects thinking about it, but we were really passionate about it. The idea of the outdoor living space and what you can really do in a balcony of that size. The idea of having, in my mind, my sort of measure, honestly, was like round table, 6 people, dinner. Can we do that? And somebody said, you can't do that on a regular balcony. I said, of course not.
No.
You could do it on a balcony like this. Like, that sounds
Wow.
amazing.
I would rent for that. That would be my selling point. But my question is for security, and this is just me as a single woman. When you mentioned the lower level units, is there like an access door that someone could easy access from the outside, or
So
those little bottom units?
Yeah, so the bottom units in that cellar space down here, there's a railing around here, right, for security and safety as well, but kind of you need to have a railing there because there's then the drop of the concrete of the areaway. And it creates, imagine like an outdoor terrace. And instead of it being at grade, it's like you have a little well, right? That's a few feet down with a wall, and you could have a patio table out there and chairs and whatnot. And then you have a door from your unit out to that area, a secure door. So much like any English basement or any patio, it's just that it's within the well a few feet down as opposed to at grade. But you've got the plantings, you've got the railing, you've got the setback. So in theory, anybody can get into any space if they want to, but it's secure. And and because we're not having stairs from every one of those patios up to the outside, it's not like people are going to be traversing in and out every single day to go to work through that areaway. It's your own enclosed space.
Okay, John, I think there's some questions here for you, Jamie.
Yeah,
on
so
that.
I'll stop the share so
Yep.
I can see you all, and I think there was a, oh, I think Commissioner Eichler, did you send a link to
Where'd the
view?
chat go?
Okay, I see Commissioner Eichler sent to view, so I appreciate that, just showing you, I think that you can see the alley. And so I see that, and now I'm scrolling, sorry. After that, I think
John had it.
said,
Yep.
yep, impact on street parking. Rendering seems to portray wide streets, which is not the reality. If there is street parking, please compare by right units allowed. Okay, sure. So on the parking, the only impact that we envision to the parking that exists today is that DDOT, when you do a new building, likely will have a drop-off zone, which I'm sure you've seen signs in front of an apartment building. There may be 2 or 3 spaces that may be there today. And I don't know if there is a drop-off zone there, to be honest with you, today on 8th Street. I imagine there probably isn't, which means you could probably park on terms of the entirety of 8th Street, and DDOT will limit it. So it may be that there's, let's say, 2 spaces less along 8th Street, but there's no other reason why we would limit parking there. It's the same.
Will residents be eligible for residential parking permits?
Yes.
Then that's a huge impact on street parking.
Okay, so you don't so much mean losing parking, you mean having more people sharing in street parking.
I assume that's what John meant. I can't speak for him.
Sure. Sure. John, do you want to say something about that, or?
I'm going to try and unmute. There we go. No, I just see 90 parking places and 300 units. This is something on the line of Mount Vernon Square construction. And if you look, you know, S Street and A Street and all the little streets around there do not look wide enough to accommodate this amount of traffic. Now, doing the rendering drawings, you show no cars parked, and there's almost always cars parked. And I think it makes the streets look like they could accommodate buildings of this size and even greater density, which is what's being requested. And I just think that that's not very realistic. I think it's kind of ingenuous to portray the renderings with these great wide streets. That's all.
Sure.
I mean, cars are not a big issue for me. I'd like to see the share bikes doubled at the metro entrance, kind of like, you know, the DuPont bicycle docks, because there's going to be that amount of need in that area. But I think that, and that's why the second question is really, what are we talking about? Increased density? How many more units are we talking about?
Sure. So I'll answer the unit question, then I'll get back onto parking. So there are 50 units at the site today that are vacant, and we're going to be going to 316 units. So we can do the math and figure out what the net gain in terms of units in the city housing stock is, right? So there's a net gain of 266 units into the city's housing stock. Of those 316 units, 48 will be affordable. That means that the city has a net gain of 48 affordable units, and 316 minus 48, 268 market rate units. So if you think about the mayor's housing goals with respect to by 2025 having, you know, 36,000 additional housing units, of which 12,000 are affordable, we're contributing almost 50 affordable where none exist, as well as I mentioned, 266 or so market rate units. So it is a net gain of housing in the city. We frankly think it's a good thing. Everyone talks about the housing crisis and the need for more housing in the district, more opportunities for people to live in wonderful neighborhoods like Shaw. So we're excited to be able to add, again, both market rate and affordable housing to the housing stock. In terms of the impacts on transportation, we are also thrilled, frankly, to be a main proponent of transit-oriented development, which is basically building as close as possible to a metro entrance and encouraging people in Shaw who, living here to use the metro rail. Obviously, we'll be right next to the station. That's a huge, incentive for people who move to this building to take metro. Also prioritizing bicycles and having a really prominent bike room with ample parking for bicycles will encourage people. Also, frankly, this location is so proximate to downtown and a lot of different areas. We think a lot of people will be on foot. I'm sure you all know people living in Shaw who don't do anything other than walk around everywhere. I certainly know people like that. So we think all of those things are going to be impactful. That said, parking is always a tricky thing. I've had many people tell me already, 93 spaces is way too many. You're building next to metro. Why do you have an entire level of below grade parking? I've had people tell me, that's not enough parking. How are you going to have 316 units and only 93 spaces? It all starts and ends for us with data. We hire a traffic consultant who analyzes the traffic patterns, who makes assumptions based on utilization rates in other buildings, looks at all the different apartment buildings and their garages and how many of those spaces are rented and how many people use their automobiles and how often and for what kind of trips. And we basically attempt to thread the needle. The amount of required parking per DDOT at this location is 53 spaces. We're at 52 or 53, I'll have to check. We're providing basically 40 more spaces than is required. There are some folks who honestly believe that's blasphemous. There are other folks who say, as I said, that's not nearly enough. We believe that that is an adequate amount of parking to provide opportunities for those folks who are only going to live here if they have a car and if we accommodate their car. And at the same time, we don't want to encourage everyone in Shaw to come and move to this building and bring their car, because the more cars that come, the more traffic that's on the street. So that's kind of that delicate balance. In terms of the opportunity to obtain a residential parking permit, people living in this building are the same as people living in a row home or another apartment. We don't believe that people living in this building have any less right to petition to use public streets. They're residents of the district, they're residents of Shaw. They share this neighborhood along with their neighbors. And so
No, they're residents of a new high density building that will have a disproportionate impact on the people in the row houses that are built according to the existing zoning. I myself, and this is a newsflash to the committee, I myself am moving into a new condo later this year in a building where we are not going to be eligible for residential parking permits. It was part of the deal with the city. And I think if you want this committee to approve your proposal when the time comes, you're going to have to seriously think about excluding, if you're confident in your numbers that 93 is the right number of parking spaces, that you should be willing to offer that residents can't get residential parking.
And he has a point. There's never been a really good answer from DDOT about that. I think it might have been your project in my area that was talked about, and I was told no, but then someone just told me a couple of weeks ago, where are you going? Is it, because if someone
It's
just
the
told me,
wharf. I'm going to the wharf.
okay, that's that building. Someone just talked to me about your building you're going to, and they go, no, we have that. I'm like, but how could that be? I was told no years ago. So I don't.
No. Right on Wiltberger and T, the Shaw building, they do not have the ability to request residential parking. That building
clear.
across from the Howard.
So let me just say that, this project is at the beginning of the process, right? And part of the process is the ANC gets to negotiate neighborhood and community benefits with the project owner, and that the shape of the building and transportation amenities and a variety of other things. And I think that a lot of the people who I'm hearing from want to reduce the impact of cars on our neighborhood, and that is to reduce the need for parking on the street, and also to ensure that there's not an increase of demand for parking on the street, and also to ensure that there's not an increase in traffic. I've been hearing that S Street is bumper to bumper during morning rush and whatnot. So anything that we can do to enable car-free lifestyles in this unit and to make them preferable, I think would be something that the project team should definitely consider all along. And that may include reduction in the number of parking spaces that you're planning on offering. And it may include exempting yourself from the residential parking permit program to ensure that, this is TOD. You're going to walk the walk, literally, and ride the train and take the bike share if you live here, because it's, 2022 and we're in a dense urban environment, and you can walk to work. So no one, should have the right to store their $20,000 car on the sidewalk for free or for $40 a year, right? And imagine you've got a whole building of people who want to store their car on the sidewalk, right? Like, or sorry, on the street for a handful of dollars a year. It's not sustainable, and so we definitely need to find a way that we can craft a package that ensures that there's a reduction in car dependency for everyone who lives there as much as possible.
And Jamie, I hate to go back to my original question, but they weren't really quite answered. By right, you can build at a certain density and have a certain number of units.
Sure.
You're asking for increased density with more units. So I would like to see
Sure.
the comparison.
Absolutely. I misunderstood your question. I thought you were asking how many were at the site. So I can tell you that we can build to 90 feet by right. So we're not asking to go any higher than we could, but there is an amount of units, and I just have to look back and see what the density is. I don't know if you recall, I think you asked the question, Commissioner Eichler. I could try to find the email, what the FAR.
Drop it in the chat. I'll drop it in the chat. I have it right up here on the screen. It's actually a FAR of 3.5 is the maximum for the by right. Lot occupancy 75%.
But then you get an IZ bonus on top of that.
But is that by right, or is that part of?
As long as you do over 10 units, you have to do IZ. So that ends up being, I think it's 3.5 times 1.2. I believe it's a 4.2. So roughly 150,000 square feet is by right. And we are going to, I think, 260,000 square feet.
So it's about 40% more. Something like that.
Whatever that percentage is.
From 150 to 260, you said?
Yeah.
Alex, go ahead and share your thoughts.
Yeah, Jamie, thanks. I may have missed this at the beginning of the presentation. Are you, in addition to the PUD, are you applying for a zoning map amendment as well?
Yes, it's a map amendment and a PUD.
To MU8, is that right?
MU8A, yes.
Why did you decide MU8A? I'm curious, that has an FAR of 5.0. The ANC recently supported a map amendment for parcel 42 across the street to an Arts 4, which is a FAR of 6.0. And we also recently supported a PUD at 7th and P that is also a moderate density residential commercial on the Flum map amendment to an MU6, which is a 6.0 FAR. I'm just curious.
We're
just curious
yeah,
why an MU8, especially because this location is so transit oriented on the literally on top of a metro station, near job centers, on 2 bus priority corridors. Just curious about kind of why.
Yeah,
MU6 versus other. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. MU8A actually gets us to 7.2 with an FA with a PUD.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in consultation, I don't have my zoning attorney here, that was the densest that we felt that Office of Planning would be comfortable with at the site. So I don't think there was a zone designation that we felt would provide more density, if that's what you're getting at.
You don't think that the Office of Planning supported an Arts 4 nearly across the street? Yeah.
I'm not an expert on whether Arts 4 gets you higher than a 7.2 with a PUD.
Okay. And then I guess I have a couple other questions. So I this is a terrific location, and I'm really excited that we're going to see more density. This is like one of the places where we should be building more housing is right on top of metro stations. So speaking of the transit, I strongly agree with the points that Michael was making. The minimum parking requirement for this site is 53 spaces. I'm disappointed that the proposal comes in at 75% above the parking minimum. we have, the district has very clear goals in terms of discouraging single occupancy vehicles. Just we have a target of having no more than 25% of commuter trips by car by 2032. And so I would like this committee and the ANC to work with you to see whether we could bring the number of parking spaces down, because that just does not seem appropriate for this space to have so many parking. And
So
maybe
we're parking at under a 0.3, which is probably lower from what I understand than most new projects would, and very aggressive. We've had a lot of other concerns of folks saying you're not parking nearly enough parking spaces. You need a lot more. So that's what I was saying earlier about the delicate balance. So I hear your point. It's well taken. I just wanted to throw that out there, that we get it on all sides.
And honestly, if we can just, just way future, that I'd be more into the elimination of the residential parking.
I do not support that. I don't think that current residents have any greater right to on-street parking than future
Well,
residents.
what do you?
I think I
What do
agree
the
with
people
you on
who
that
you?
point. And so one other thing that I wanted
But
to bring
Alex-
up is, John, I'm sorry, can I finish? One other thing that I wanted to bring up is I wanted to ask about the about IZ Plus and whether this development would fall under IZ Plus, and if so, what the IZ Plus affordable percentage is compared to what your kind of initial proffer is for affordability for the property.
So IZ Plus is a new tool for projects seeking a map amendment. And so if we were simply seeking to change the map here and say it should be MU8, we wouldn't be proposing a project. We'd simply be saying we want to build something, give us MU8, and then we would build by right to MU8. So instead of bringing forth designed building and offering different community benefits and talking about proffers and talking about all the different things that may come up and the intricacies of the project, we'd simply be converting the map. And if you do that, then there's a structure, if you choose to go that route and file an application where it says you want to change your density from X to Y. If you want to do that and get a new map, then it comes with this amount of affordable housing done, and then you build your building and you go out and do the same kind of process. We were not interested in pursuing a map amendment alone and doing IZ Plus. This was never an idea in our mind to do anything other than a PUD at this site.
Okay, so my understanding, and I'm still kind of learning the contours of IZ Plus, is that if this project was being moved forward as simply a map amendment from an RA4, which has a by right FAR of 3.5, to an MU8, which has an IZ FAR of 6.0, that's an increase of 2.5 in the FAR ratio, which would mean that under IZ Plus, that would require 20% IZ units. Your initial proffer is 15% IZ units, which it seems like that is less than what we would get if this project was being put forward as simply a map amendment. Does that make sense?
I haven't studied the numbers. I hear what you're saying. We're not interested in doing a map amendment alone and doing IZ Plus. We want to do a PUD.
What I'm saying is that the PUD process, which is supposed to deliver community benefits, of which affordable housing is probably the most important. The initial proffer that you described, 15%, is lower than kind of what the default would be under IZ Plus if it was just a map amendment without a community benefits negotiated package.
Sure. No, I hear you. And again, in order to make the project work for us, we decided to pursue with our property a PUD. It'll be up to obviously everybody to evaluate whether the community benefits package is robust enough and for the zoning commission to take that into consideration. I think the fact that we're going from 8% required to 15% and nearly doubling the inclusionary zoning, as well as doing some larger units, as well as adding so much to the housing stock, is is a large proffer, but everybody can make that determination. I can tell you that it's not financially feasible here because there's no source of subsidy for us to do 20% IZ units. So that isn't something that we're able to commit to. We don't begin a project and put out an opening salvo to make adjustments around it. We want to do as much affordable housing as we can figure out a way to do. And a project like what we did in Shaw, we did 12% IZ because that was what that project could afford, and we figured it out. And we looked at the economics and basically calculated how to do it. Essentially, without a source of subsidy, when you build an affordable unit, you are balancing that unit and its affordability on the backs of the market rate unit. The only way to pay for affordable units without a source of other subsidy, frankly, is to build market rate units that make the money to support it. And if you look at our economic model, I mean, what it tells us is that we could do 15%, but if we were interested in something else, we would have proposed something else. That's our view on it.
Okay, well, I think that this is an issue that I'm interested in working with the committee and Office of Planning and OAG to review a little bit more, because from my perspective, affordable housing is the single greatest benefit that we can negotiate through a public benefits proffer. And I want to make sure that we are not shortchanging ourselves.
Okay, so we haven't heard from Deborah or Christy. Anything from you guys? Deborah?
Yeah, what is, I don't know if this is an area where there's LEED certification required or not, or is there any LEED?
So one of the things that the Zoning Commission will be looking at are sustainability benefits as it relates to the project, and enhanced design and design features include a real attention to sustainability. So we will be putting together and working with a sustainability consultant and a team to put together a robust package of different sustainability measures for the building. I can't say today if that means that the LEED certification level, what that level will be, but it will absolutely be LEED certified. And when we get a little further along in the process, we'll be able to figure out, is it LEED Silver version 4, which is basically like what LEED Gold used to be, or is it LEED Gold, and how do the points shake out? But we'll have a number of features that'll come as we advance the project.
So you might or might not have LEED certification.
It'll be LEED certified. It's just a question of
Which level.
Mhm.
It'd be nice to have.
We're also going to propose solar panels on the project.
Okay.
In addition to green roofs. And
Okay.
a number of other features.
Well, I'm very interested in knowing more about that. And I think we should all be interested in that for all new buildings being constructed in the city. So when will we know more about that?
So part of the way that this works is, at this stage, it's an informational presentation. We haven't even filed the application. So a lot of those questions and a lot of those things kind of get hashed out before we're coming to the ANC asking for support. At this stage of the game, we're really describing the project as it stands today, collecting feedback, which you all are giving me tonight. And the project continues to evolve. Obviously, we think it warrants having a hearing. And that doesn't mean that the ANC is necessarily, unanimously in support of the project. It means they think it's obviously makes sense to have a hearing and discuss the matter. And then in anticipation of the hearing, we'll file our materials, we'll further the design, and we'll come to the ANC and say, these are the bones of the project. This includes all those questions being answered in terms of what the project is, and we'll ask for support from the ANC, all in advance of the hearing.
Well, I would encourage as much as you can possibly do in terms of the solar, the LEED certification, the green roofs, because that can be part of your branding. I mean, if you're doing something for transportation, in terms of your location at the metro, it seems like you want to extend that brand and continue that idea of sustainability.
I think that's a great point. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Christy, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I had another thought. Let me see, what was it? Oh, okay. You'll like this, Rochelle. I know you haven't gotten here, and this is probably, you don't even want to answer this, but you mentioned the street trees, which won't be on your your property doesn't go all the way to the curb. That's actually DDOT, but will you be taking care of the street trees around the building?
We're responsible for all the trees that I showed because we build
Okay.
the property line. And so
Okay.
we'll be adding to and maintaining the ground cover, landscaping, the trees there. Yes.
All the way to the curb?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay. I like that.
That's positive.
Yeah, that's a very big positive.
Okay, so Commissioner Eichler, do you have anything before we wrap this up?
Well, John, do you still have your hand up for a question?
Oh, John. You have to unmute yourself, John. Unmute.
Yes, I think Commissioner Lopez has an idea of how he feels about the residential parking. I think his constituents might well have another opinion on that matter. I did the calculation. I'm no mathematician, but it looks like it's a 42 or 43% increase over by right. I think that's totally out of context in this neighborhood and totally out of context with the 5 other major building projects in a 3 or 4 block area. So I'm just telling you that this is not something that's going to go well. And I intend to work with my neighbors to try and voice this. So
It's
that's all.
interesting. It's interesting to have such a small group of people. We can still disagree on so many things. Like I disagree with Alex on the residential parking, but I totally disagree with John on it. I think a building right on top of a metro should be 20 stories. It should be as dense as humanly possible, just without the parking on the street.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it
I'm
sounds like
just
Scott and I are
excited about
pretty
the
well aligned.
opportunity to meet so many new neighbors.
Yes, yes.
Hooray. Well, we should all encourage our neighbors to come to next Tuesday's meeting so then they can hear about this informational presentation and then further meetings with us, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay.
Yeah, so just in closing, thank you, Jamie, for coming out. There's, again, this is just an early step in a very long process. One of the things that I wanted to note was that there was an armed robbery, a mugging right in front of your newly vacant property there on the 1700 block of 8th Street recently. I am concerned about security concerns and the lack of eyes on the street because this property is vacant. And if it's going to be vacant for another 2 years before construction even starts, like what can you do as an owner to ensure that pedestrians can move safely up and down the block and not worry about being mugged, right? So I don't know if there's any pop-up things that you could consider or cameras or any way that you can activate the street to make it feel safer for people while we're waiting for this great new project to come online, because there could be someone's life threatened on this very block while we're waiting for this important project to move forward.
I would add lighting to that list. Lighting on the sidewalk, streets.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that when the Heritage at Shaw Station office and laundry facilities are moved across the street, because those were initially on this side of the street, we'll be fencing and securing the site. And I think that will help a lot in terms of not having people who could be behind the fences or near the buildings or anything like that. And so that in and of itself will create a barrier so that there aren't people who might be able to take advantage of the openness and the porosity to hide. That does fly in the face of pop-ups and activating the buildings. To be honest with you, we don't want people in and through the buildings. I think that creates all sorts of other challenges, frankly. The other thing to keep in mind is that we do have an office that'll move across the street onto the other side. And so, having the staff there, having an eye out, I don't know the whole staff makeup today, but we can certainly investigate having the staff doing roaming, walks around that side of the site as well. We also coordinate with the Lincoln Westmoreland folks on the other side of the alley and have had conversations about safety and security there too. So I appreciate that perspective.
Let me just clarify. I wasn't suggesting that you open up the buildings for public activity. What I was suggesting is popping something up maybe in the yard, maybe a temporary dog park. I know we have a new Shaw dog park a couple blocks away, but something that you could do that could make people be able to use the space and bring people to and through so that there are more eyes out there. Clearly you need to secure your property, and I'm not suggesting that you do anything along those lines, but any creative solutions, whether it's art or something that could just lighting and cameras and art, something that you could do to just make that corridor feel not only feel safe, but be safe, because, you know, we've got a giant grocery store right over here and a Whole Foods right over there. And people are going to be walking back and forth between apartments and amenities and the metro. And if they're not safe, then they're not going to move into your building in the future, because they're not going to be living here anymore. So just, you know, keep in mind anything that you can do in the short term just to soften the blow. Again, 4-year time frame. It's a long time between now and when all these new neighbors are going to be here, making us feel, you know, more company on the sidewalk. And Deborah, did you have another comment?
I just want to endorse what you're saying. I think that's very creative, and I think all developers should think more about that. It's great community relations while you're doing the building, and it shouldn't cost that much. Also, I mean, I was just thinking basically about trash, and you went way beyond what I was thinking. I always get upset with all the trash around construction sites. It drives me crazy. So what you're suggesting with street art, lighting, potential temporary dog park, whatever, bike parking, something, whatever you can suggest. I mean, could the city put a bike rack there or something? I don't know. I mean, be creative, you know, it'd be great public outreach, community relations for the bank and the developer to do that. And pick up the trash. too.
Yeah,
Provide
long
trash
before we're under construction, we'll have separate discussions. We've done this a number of times, where we'll dive into everything related to construction, whether it be hours of operations, trash, debris, rodents, truck queuing, noise, the whole gamut. So I think that's all really helpful. And
Okay.
We would like that for your project by me.
oh, absolutely.
We want.
We have a
Oh,
So
construction
let's
management
lead
fund.
in. Okay, so
one
let's
more,
wrap this up.
Rochelle. What,
Okay.
are you going to have special receptacles for dog poop?
That has not been designed. I'll jot it down.
I think that's a must. The city
Okay.
has, the city has them. The mayor has them. She's not sending them, I don't know why she's not producing them all over the city. But they've been testing them out in certain developments, but we really want that.
Jamie, if you want an example, at the corner of 9th and P, next to one of the City Market buildings, I believe the City Market actually maintains it. It's like a little cylindrical thing. I mean, part of the challenge is that people fill up the trash cans and then the dog poop goes on top and then it falls out and then it gets squished and then it's just this whole cycle of disgusting mess. So anything you can do to help segregate that as part of the grounds that you're maintaining could be helpful.
Huge.
Okay.
That would be huge.
Sure.
All right, gang, for Michael Eichler's project. We'll see Jamie on Tuesday, but we would like to have 2 more minutes with you, Jamie, Deborah and I, about what's the current status for that. We're going to talk briefly about 1200 Fifth Street because Jamie's right there and Deborah has some tree questions. But go ahead, do a brief update.
Okay.
Sure.
Jamie.
So we have another project that went through a PUD process for the block between 5th and 6th and M and N. We worked with Torty Gallus there to design an apartment building. It's 361 units. The project was appealed by 2 churches across the street. The appeal was filed a year ago, last January. It's at the DC Court of Appeals, which, as you might know, is understaffed, needs more judges. We have been told by the court that the case does not require a hearing, an oral argument, which is usually a good sign in the ultimate merits of the case, that it'll be dismissed. But that doesn't mean that that's happening quicker necessarily. There are cases that get dismissed and are done in a year. There are cases that can take 2 years. So Commissioner Nigro, your guess is as good as mine. It could be 2 months and we'd be thrilled. It could be 9 or 12 months more. I don't know.
And this is not really my area. It's really Frank's area, but everyone asked me about it. I don't want to say every day, but it feels like every day.
Well, we were very upset when you tore down over a dozen trees and you're so far away from construction. There was a lot, I mean, that was, we were crying. People were on the street crying about that, literally.
So
you took away a lot. You took away a lot of green space, a lot of greenery, a lot of trees, which mean a lot to us in this neighborhood. And you're not even starting construction for, at that point, 2 years, it looked like, at
Yeah.
least.
So we work with DDOT and urban forestry very closely, as well as tree experts who, and so every tree is accounted for and there's a plan that DDOT has to bless. So as much as what it might look like, we're not willy-nilly removing trees. Every tree's health is carefully analyzed. There are trees that may have been there that were dying or
No,
dead.
no, they were healthy. They were fine. You didn't have to take them down right now. There was no need to. They were filled.
Deborah, if you want to have a separate discussion, I'd be happy to show you the report and
Yes.
the work that we
Yes,
did.
we
together
would, we
for
would.
forestry.
We'd love to,
I'm
yeah.
happy to talk with Commissioner Nigro and set something up because that's not what we do. It wasn't a willy-nilly reduction of trees for any reason.
Oh, no, I'm beginning my foray with urban forestry. So that's gonna be my new issue. So
Well, we'll
a lot
set
of
that
people-
up, Deborah.
we'll set
'cause-
that up. We do
Yeah.
need to talk about it. Thank you. I
And we
live
will
I live
talk
one
about
block
this
away
project.
from your construction area, so
Okay.
less than a block, actually.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you.
everyone. We'll see everyone next month or on Tuesday.
Bye.
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Take care. Be safe,
Thank you, Jamie.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.